when it comes to talking about like the kind of stereotypical image of PhD students, I think a lot of people immediately jump to kind of like the white lab coats with, you know, and whatnot. But it's when you are able to discover different types of kind of academic routes, so to say, considering a PhD within the arts, like there are so many options that I think often people don't consider and often don't think are kind of academically viable for careers or for kind of progressional options. So broadly speaking, I look at Swedish popular music. But essentially I get to look at how popular musicians have managed to sustain and elevate their popularity and their reputation, but without any form of kind of physical onstage presence. So that's kind of in very broad terms. But I get to look at ABBA kind of 90% of my time. Essentially ABBA, they kick-started themselves at Eurovision with Waterloo, and they made this really big image of themselves because they were so arguably different from previous acts that have performed at the Eurovision Song Contest. I think the advice that I would give to someone who was approaching kind of the process of doing a PhD is firstly, go into it thinking that this is something that you really want to do. To undertake the commitment of doing PhD research, you really have to be really focused on your topic. If it's your passion, I think that's a really important thing. Even undergraduate students just show that if there's something that they're really fascinated by, they can use that fascination and just kind of tie it into this academic passion that they could have, which they can then develop into, you know, a career in academia. Every PhD student, they start off with this massive aim of creating this big question they wanted to answer, and eventually we come to realise that, okay, we maybe need to scale it back a bit and be a bit more realistic about what we can do within the given time frame. When you start a PhD, you think, okay, I've got 3-4 years to bash out this huge research project. But as the further you get into it, you realise, okay, we might have to scale it back a bit. Day to day, kind of in the life of an arts PhD student, your days can be completely varied. You know, some days you might have back-to-back interviews that you're doing, especially in your second year when things are rammed and you really need to get some data in for your thesis. Some days could be really full of interviews and kind of questionnaires and things that you're handing out to the participants that you've chosen. But some days could also be slightly more chilled when you're sat there, kind of you're reading through your very large pile of books that you're having to go through. But day by day it really varies. Sometimes I will work from home. I've got like a little setup at home in my living room with my Mac and my laptop, and again another very large pile of books. But sometimes I might, you know, go and work in a cafe or go and work in a library. I think it's very important to change the area that you work in. Personally, that works really well for me, just to try and keep it slightly different and keep your kind of mind engaged with the work that you're trying to focus on. But sometimes I'll be writing kind of sections of my thesis. Sometimes I might be writing conference papers, conference proposals, filling in forms, annotating like interviews that I've managed to pull together, getting more participants. Your day can be very varied, and so it does keep it interesting, which is good, and it keeps you on your toes. So going into this PhD, I started off completely self-funded, without any assumption that I was going to get any funding. I knew that I wanted to pursue research around the area, and to me, I was in an okay position to be able to support myself through that, with kind of the aim being the long-term aim going into lecturing. But for many people, you know, without getting funding, opportunities like this are not often viable. And I think it's really important for people to understand that some of the larger funding opportunities, if you do not get them, like myself, there are actually other funding opportunities that you can go for, especially some of the smaller ones that are often within, they're more like faculty-based, and they can suit your research. So some of us do get to teach within our PhDs. I taught a module last year called the Hollywood Musical, which was really, really good. So I taught for the first half of that module last term, ran all the seminars and a few of the lectures, and that was really, really good. It was really nice to get some teaching experience. The DTH obviously plays quite a big part within my teaching experience because I'm essentially kind of teaching every week, which is helpful. But I mean, the music in particular, teaching opportunities do come up. Often you'll get informed of them by your supervisor, or sometimes the department will send out emails that you can get involved with. But personally, teaching experience has been really, really quite a vital part of this process because I've been able to kind of get a taste of what post-PhD life may look like. And it's useful because you're building up all these techniques at the same time and getting this experience that not many people get to do, of getting to teach current university students when you're a student yourself, you know, so that's always quite good. So for me personally, going to conferences has been really, really beneficial to this PhD because I've been able to stand there and present my own research in front of however many people and being able to kind of grow this confidence with my own research and the direction that it's going. It's also really, really valuable to get other opinions to an extent on your research. So when the questions pop up after your conference paper, and people will say, oh, that, you know, this part was interesting, but you know, what about this? And you think, oh, you know, I've looked at that, but you know, you start to consider the significances of what people might say about your research and how this can kind of direct your focus as well. And also, I mean, with reference to kind of the end of the PhD process, when you have, you know, the PhD viva and whatnot, conferences are a really, really good way of kind of preparing you for the questions that might come up during your viva. The same thing as doing like a 3-minute thesis, opportunities like that with like the Researcher Academy. That's really, really useful to kind of, you know, preparing you for things that might be asked during your viva.